Welcome to the Sheffield Sunday As Bill Sees It meeting. Today it is with great pleasure and much gratitude that I welcome John C., who's going to speak for up to 60 minutes, and it is Expanding God Consciousness, Month 5, Empowered by Faith, Harnessing Spiritual Strength. After John shared, we'll open up the room for questions. John, it is incredible to have you here this week with us again. Thank you so much. And the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me back for 5 months in a row. This is incredible because I remember a time in my life you would never have done that. So greetings from Canada, folks. It's just nice to be with you. And as I was preparing for my talk today, I had a good friend of mine pass away yesterday morning. And I was really paying attention to my experience around that. Of course, I'm sad for his family, and he wasn't one of us, but I'd known him since childhood. And as I kind of reflected on the time that we've had together, the friendships that we've had, it came to, pass. So you know what? This is a life that's temporary. It isn't forever. We are not immortal. And unfortunately for me, sometimes it takes that kind of awakening to come back to the idea to value every moment that I can have each day. So as I was reflecting on that, and I'm thinking, you know what? Where did all the time go? You know, I've been in AA since I was 23 years old, and I've stayed a little bit over 51 years of sobriety. And I don't say that in the sense of bragging. I say it because how can you brag about a gift? You really can't. But it's important for you to know who you're listening to, because we live at a day at a time, but we can feel safe and secure that we can stay sober and flourish as a human being for a lifetime. So there's no reason for us to be afraid that we're going to squander this grace that we've been given, that we can live our lives fully and completely, be completely functioning as a human being, feeling all the feelings that we have, thinking all the thoughts, establishing our beliefs, reorganizing all of that, so that we can finally achieve what it was always in our hearts to achieve. And that, I believe, is becoming a flourishing individual. You see, I'm not going to spend any time on my drunk-a-log, but I'd suffice to say that there came a period in my life where I realized that I couldn't stop drinking, and that I relied on alcohol rather than relying on any character I had to get me through difficult and uncomfortable times. And I always go back to this idea of Dr. Silkworth in the Doctor's Opinion he talks about this idea that we were restless, irritable, and discontent. And if you think about that, those 3 words, those powerful 3 words that I can identify with, that I can understand completely right to the roots of my soul, that I was and can be today restless, irritable, and discontent. And you'll notice the sequence of events that it talks about in that Doctor's Opinion. It talks about this idea that we're restless, irritable, and discontent, and that we seek comfort and ease. And for us in this room, most of which we turn to was alcohol. And certainly other addictive behaviors and drugs and other things occur in our lifetime, our lifestyles as well. It's as if we're always trying to find something that we do not have. And any recovery happens over time. You begin to realize what I was chasing in these counterfeit ways of drinking and doing other behaviors. What I was chasing, I already got, but I didn't realize that I already had it. This idea that I was born for purpose and meaning, that I had potential as a human being, that I could love, that I could express kindness and empathy for others, and that I can be a productive citizen in my lifetime. And my friend who passed away, he was certainly all of that. And I celebrate his life today, and it was just a pleasure to have a friend such as he. Friends, when I came to a point, and I can remember it, it was a fearful point in my life where I realized I had to drink and I had to stop at the same time. That collision of those two things, which were impossible, by the way, I realized that I was in deep trouble. And then, uh, thank God for a little bit of grace in that moment. I reached out to phone Alcoholics Anonymous, and two fellas came up in 12 step, and we call them 12-step work, right? And they came up there, and I was agitated. I was like a lion. You can just imagine what a lion was like, pacing back and forth in his cage. That's very much what I was like. These two men sat on the couch and listened. They weren't intimidated by me kind of walking back and forth, agitated. And they never told me anything what to do or what not to do. There was no moral judgment expressed in that meeting as I remember it. But what they did do was share their experience with me. They shared an experience about how they were, what happened, and what it's like today, what they are like today. And it's funny, at the moment that I got something that I really didn't expect to have happen, I got a glimmer of hope. So in so I started going to meetings and watching other people, the power of the group. You're watching other people, they're staying sober, and you think, my goodness, this is possible even for me. And it's funny what you hang on to, which really tells a lot about my personal experiences. Even today, I really listen to what am I hanging on to. In those days, I can remember thinking that, you know what, rarely have you seen a person fail who was thoroughly followed our path. I was convinced that I was that rarity. You see, that expressed a certain experience I was having of hopelessness, of learned helplessness, that I couldn't possibly stay sober a day at a time. And the magic and the mystery of Alcoholics Anonymous started taking place in my life. One day, 2 days, 3 days, a week, month. My goodness, couldn't believe it. All the times that I tried to control drinking, stop drinking, drink on certain days, only drink with certain people or drink alone, all the different kinds of rules I put in place, I could not stay sober. But for some reason, coming to this community, this fellowship, we call it, I was able to stay sober a day at a time. And that's what I mean by it's a gift. It wasn't me in a sense. You know, we talked today about, you know what, you got to go to meetings and you got to read the big book. You got to be sponsored. We're doing all these things, which are wonderful things, by the way. And we give credit to those things for staying sober as if we deserve it because of our actions. But I'd come to learn something else that was happening in the background. And that's in a sense of what we're going to be talking about today. That there is a power that exists in me and in the universe, not my power, but some sort of spiritual entity, if you like, that was available to me to advocate with me in my life. The power of this thing that we call a higher power. When I think about looking back at the work that we've done so far in the first 5 or 4 months, we're talking about a lot of things that are so contrary to the human experience. So what I mean by that is that when you're younger, when I was younger at least, I was bullheaded. Like I had the sense that the world sorted around me, and that if I had to get to anywhere, it was up to me. And if I was looking for a helping hand, I'd better look for it at the end of my arm. And I grew up with all these ideas that it is entirely up to me what is to be. Now I look back at that young man, naive maybe, bold, very much afraid, to just completely rely on self. But what I didn't realize that my failures were pecking away at my confidence. I didn't have much power. We talk about willpower, and it's willpower is self-will is interesting. Sometimes we talk about it as if it's bad or it's negative. I can assure you that it is not. It is a human condition to have this self-will. It provides things for us. But I'll tell you what happens, friends, with self-will, it is limited. In other words, it's like a muscle that tires quickly over time. And I don't know if you've experienced this, but I have many times. I get up in the morning and I was going to eat properly. I was going to have a good lifestyle. And at 2 o'clock, I had a cookie in my mouth. You see, my morning conviction, my commitment to eating well, and all the temptations I had to up to that cookie, I was defending and I was using up this self-will until the point that I was just too weak and I caved in. And to confess to you honestly, I had more than one cookie. That's the way self-will works. And if you rely on your self-will, you're going to experience the same thing. But the good news here, friends, is that we're invited to have another superpower, if you like, into our lives. Because we're going to turn our will and our lives over to this being, however you want to define that being. You see, I'm not here to convince you of anything. I come here with no authority, by the way. But what I come here for, and really, I'm not looking or seeking approval from you either. I'm simply here to share my experience. And if you can use any part of it, my goodness, you're welcome to it. Because I know what it's like to be drunk and hopeless. I know what it's like to be sober and hopeless. I know what it's like to be so harshly judging myself that it was hard even to live with myself. I know what it's like to have an overwhelming fears and shame and guilt and anger so much that, I could probably kill at different times of my life. I know what that's like. And I also know, as a result of practicing principles here, that I was able to find peace and joy in my life. So we all come to Alcoholics Anonymous primarily to stop drinking. Of course, I mean, that's only obvious, isn't it? We don't come here to find God. We don't come here to find a higher power. We come here to stop drinking. And we celebrate those moments, those milestones in sobriety. Oh, sober a year, a month, 3 months, 1 week, 1 day. Congratulations. Wonderful stuff. And it is wonderful. But what's available here? What's available here and in the 12 steps is something not less miraculous. It is a huge opportunity to have the mindset, the quality of life that I was chasing to try to get to an alcohol, which I could never find. I have found it here sober. And it's in the spiritual realm that I found it. It wasn't going to 90 meetings in 90 days. It wasn't knowing the big book. It wasn't helping all kinds of people. There was something else there that was providing something for me that I was desperately thirsty for. And that is the peace and joy that comes from a life well lived. Now, I had to go to meetings, of course, and I sponsored people, and I welcome the idea that I'm in service of other people, and I enjoy doing that. And I keep doing it, by the way, because you can feel the love and the forgiveness of the higher power, but it only happens for me when it's manifested through different actions. It's not for me to keep. I'm like a filter, something coming into my soul and something going out. When you think about the universe, everything's moving. Nothing is static. Everything moves. Everything changes. You know, I've been told that we even change every cell in our body every 7 years. Every cell in our bodies are new cells every 7 years. Everything changes. So I need to understand that and be part of that change, be part of that dynamic movement, and to be congruent with what's happening around me in nature. So as we talked about in the first few things, I want to just kind of recap a little bit. There's some powerful things that we can do that will allow this higher power to come into our lives in a deep, in an effective way. Because what happens with a human being, we prevent it from doing that. We prevent it. We resist. Anybody resists? Anybody says, you know what? No. I'm not going to do that. I don't believe in a God. I had a problem with religion. I don't even want to talk about it. And I certainly don't want to mention the word God. So there's resistance there. And by the very fact that we're resisting, we're delaying a quality of life that is unimaginable. So we have to let go of the guard. We have to look at this thing as maybe this is just possible. And this is what I want to share with you today. I want to share with you the part of the second step, or come to believe, or came to believe, and the word faith. And the title today, it has deliberately it's faith. It isn't believing. And there is a difference between those two words, and I just want to share a moment about that. Believing typically refers to accepting something as true based on evidence and reasoning. So it is an intellectual thing. It can be a mental or intellectual agreement with a proposition or an idea. For example, you might believe in the validity of a scientific theory because of the supporting evidence. You see? So we come to believe, or we came to believe, we're really making a intellectual decision that it's possible that there's something existing. And if that's the level you're willing to stay at, then that's wonderful. If it works for you, wow, good for you. But I was, for some reason, seeking something deeper. And that's faith. Faith, on the other hand, often implies a deeper level of commitment or trust. This is a big word, friends. Trust. So see if you can identify with this. Oh, I prayed the third step prayer, or I prayed the serenity prayer. and nothing seems to happen. It's like speaking into an empty can. You see? And what I could say when I was doing that myself, and I felt that many times in my life, that I had no trust that something was going to occur. They were just words to me. I was speaking or reading a prayer. I wasn't experiencing it. So faith, on the other hand, is asking me to trust that there is a power greater than myself existing in the universe. And the less I try to define it, and the less I try to understand it, the more I trust that that is occurring, the greater the reward, it seems to me. So faith can be associated with a more profound conviction, often involving the trust or confidence in something or someone, sometimes beyond the scope of tangible proof. In other words, I'm no longer looking for empirical evidence anymore. I don't get into the debate, is God real or is it not real? I don't get into the debate of trying to believe in something. See, faith is very practical, friends. Well, let me explain why. For me, if I believe and have faith in a power that is existing in the universe, that is supporting me, forgiving me, and loving me, I then can move forward in my life in a more profound and consistent way, rather than just trying to rely on my own self-will. See, the proposition here is very important to appreciate. And it's like, to me, to put a metaphor to it, it's like somebody throwing me a life preserver in an ocean, and I'm throwing it back saying, I don't want that. I am going to take my chances in the sea that I can stay afloat without that life preserver. Now, that might be a cowardice way out, but I can tell you that it's a more productive way. So I come to accept this idea that there is an existence. And I have my own faith, by the way, my own religion, which I'm not going to share with you because I don't think this is appropriate in this arena. I would like you to define that for yourselves. So no, don't be talking to you as what's not working or what I don't believe, which holds no value for you at all, and start having another kind of conversation with you. What am I going to believe? What do I believe? What can I put my faith into? What can I trust that this is happening for me? Now, what's occurring under the ground is my self-image is changing. See, when I come to the program, I was laden with guilt and shame and brokenness, and everything I seemed to have touched was turned out terribly wrong. Relationships broken, some never repaired. And yet I was defending the way I was operating. So in AA, we talk about something different. We're talking about clearing the deck, starting fresh, starting new. That we have faith that something's occurring here, that I can not only stay sober, but I can be a fully functioning human being, not a broken one. So the scope of intangible proof and faith is really not important. So we have a belief in a higher power or spiritual principles that goes beyond reason and evidence. You see, I'm no longer relying on my intellect to say this works or it doesn't work. This goes beyond that into a mystery, into an environment that which I've never experienced before. That we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences that changes our lives at the center of our hearts. Now, I can't own that. I can't deserve that. I can't go to the store and buy that. What I can do is allow it. And that is so inconsistent with human nature. Because I want to defend. I want to explain. I want to argue. I want to know. You see, all of these things I've just shared with you in the last couple of moments, the last words, like, I gotta know. The base of that is I have to control it. That's the base. I need to control this. And in life, there's very little we can control other than ourselves. And even in those moments, oftentimes we even can't control that. So I had to learn to allow, in other words, to give up trying to have this control in my life. Use another word, surrender. You see, it's allowing, it's surrendering, not giving up, by the way. Surrender is more active than that. This sense of surrender, spiritual surrender. Sometimes we think about surrendering like one country battling another, and the losing country they give up. There's no more fight in them. In the spiritual sense, it's more than that. It's more to do with acceptance. The more willing that you are to receive the spiritual and mystical power, which can be called grace, into our lives, so we can achieve the things that we've always searched for and wanted in our life. Like I'm no doctor or no scientist, and of course, um, I don't know why I became an alcoholic. It's really not that important to me. Uh, but I will say this to you. It had something to do with me fighting and resisting and being uncomfortable with, in other words, restless, irritable, and discontent, and not knowing what to do with that angst, that stress, that cortisol running through my brain, the chemical. I don't know what to do with it. So I had to numb, had to find some sort of artificial ease. And of course, I'd sober up, and that whole experience would repeat over and over again. You see, with the spiritual experience, there's no sobering up. It's a real experience, in other words. It's not a counterfeit experience. So, empowered by faith, unleashing the divine, strength to overcome daily challenges and foster our growth. This is what's available here in Alcoholics Anonymous and in the 12 steps. No matter what we think about ourselves today, no matter our reasons or the facts and evidence, we can live a life today, right now. It doesn't matter how long you're serving. If you're willing to surrender to this idea that there is a higher power, that whatever occurs to you, that you can accept, that you can put aside your resistance and defiance as a human being, and be okay with the circumstances in which you are being greeted with, knowing that you're being cared for by this loving entity which Wilson called a higher power. all of a sudden you just removed about 80, 90% of pressure and stress, judgment, self-judgment, limiting beliefs. Fears no longer have the kind of sting anymore. And you're able to live free, not only about alcohol, but you can live free of self-condemnation. You still have fears. There's still thoughts of fears or feelings of fears come up, but they no longer have this, as I say, the sting. It's just an experience that you're having. Why? Because I trust. And what occurred in step 3 was that I turned my will and my life over to the care of God. I turned it over. So it's as if it's none of my business now. Now I'm responsible for this life, but I'm being cared for. A couple of months ago, we talked about this idea, you haven't been cared for. Have you ever cared for somebody so deeply, so profoundly, that they had a sense of ease in their life because they knew that you were looking after them? Maybe somebody cared for you that way, and you felt safe and reassured because you were being cared for. This is what's occurring in step 4, or step 3, rather. So, but we have to come to this realization of our past experiences. Each of us have destruction, chaos, things that we've done that we're ashamed of, circumstances that we got ourselves into through bad judgment. And we come to a place of sobriety, and this pains our soul because it's incomplete processing of those experiences. So we have to get that out of the way. We have to clear the drain. And this is what's important about step 4, where we start to acknowledge the fact, not to be emotional about it, but to be an observer of those experiences, the behaviors that we had. Start separating yourself from the behaviors. In other words, don't say, I am selfish. Say things like, I have had selfish moments. Because we want to protect what I call the sacred identity, this God-given identity that each of us carry with us that are trampled on by our language. So we're getting in step 4, we start to clearing away the past. We begin to see the behaviors that we exhibited as a result of experiences that we've had. And we're able to look at it for the first time without being afraid of it, to see it for what it is. And then to be able to share it with another human being, and for us to see it ourselves and to present it to God. See, we're no longer now emotionally or mentally isolated. We come into the room of other people. We are now in community. We've dealt with our past uh, as as best that we can, leading into steps 8 and 9, where we actually go and make amends for our past behaviors. So that's a clearing. I want you to think about a forest, trees that are tightly put together, and all of a sudden you walk into a clearing where there's no trees, there's only grass. And this is what occurs when we've actually done step 4. We walk into a clearing, and because of that clearing, we're able to put something else in that replaces that shame and guilt and brokenness that we once felt. And that is, we're being cared for. We're being loved. So have you ever felt that you're stuck in quicksand? And no matter how hard you try to escape, you can't. See, those are signals or cues that we haven't dealt with our past. We need to deal with the past, and we need to make that clear. Now, what's it like to carry these burdens around with us? See, could we possibly be sober and still carry those burdens with us? And the answer to that is yes. We could have, we could call it a number of things. White knuckle sobriety. Um, hey, I'm being sober, but I don't feel good emotionally. There's something wrong with me. I can't look myself in the mirror. So I want you to imagine, use your imagination here, trying to climb a mountain with a heavy knapsack full of rocks from your past, and each rock representing unprocessed experiences and unresolved guilt, making the climb almost impossible. So we gossip, we're angry, we're upset, we're sensitive. These are all signals that we haven't turned our will and our life over to the care of this God. So we're trying to pick up the pieces here. We're trying to get rid of the intellect in a sense that, oh, I know the right thing to say is that I have turned my will over to care. That's the right thing to say. We want to get past that and into the experiences of it. How am I really talking to myself? How am I really feeling here? Am I able to acknowledge my feelings rather than I shouldn't feel this way? See, when we're without this higher power, we live in fear. Or if I take a look, if I admit that I'm afraid here, what's going to happen to me? I'll push it away. I'll avoid it. I'll suppress it. Meanwhile, what we're doing is making it alive and bigger than what it is. But with this advocate, the spirit that within us and between us and in each other, we then can have the courage to actually complete and get rid of all these rocks out of the knapsack so we can have a more productive life. So we talked about surrendering. We talked about allowing. And there's another phrase that we use so often here, letting go. And it seems to me that many years that I've spent in Alcoholics Anonymous, there were moments I could not or would not let go of things. I didn't know how to, especially things that are emotionally charged where I was hurt, where I sought revenge or anger or held a resentment. How do you let that go when the sting of it is so evident that I just can't let it go? So this is what I've had to learn. I had to learn how to do it. And there's a couple of things I want to share with you. They're very simple practices, by the way. First of all, if something is stinging that bad, my one decision to turn it over or let it go may not be enough. I need maybe have to do it repeatedly for a day or a few days or a few weeks or even a few months because these things keep coming back. See, we can't control our original thoughts or feelings. They come up, and we shouldn't be surprised by them or embarrassed by them. But we want to notice them for what they are. So I want you to imagine what it's like letting go of a helium balloon and allow that balloon to rise up and drift wherever it drifts. So anytime you say, I'm going to let this go, I want you to imagine that balloon releasing from your hand because you're able to take the grip off it. You no longer hang on to it. There is a strong metaphor in opening up your hand because you're letting it go and see that balloon rise and move with the wind and allow that experience to be with what you're holding on to. Matter of fact, it might be good if you mark whatever that is on the balloon. Name it on the balloon. And the other practice I use is this. It's called leaves on a stream. So I imagine myself sitting on a summer day on a grassy knoll with a stream, the trees on the by the stream, and leaves are falling into the stream. Each leaf is named. So if I'm resentful, I'm angry, I put the name of the person I'm angry with on the leaf, then I watch the leaf go down the stream, flowing away from me. And I keep repeating that until the emotion becomes less and less and less, until I actually don't feel anything at all. I feel indifference. So I encourage you to practice this because these are things that help us to remain free. So here we are. We come to the program to quit drinking, obviously. We're wrapped up with all this upset emotion. We don't even know if we can be possibly honest with ourselves or with other people. We spent a life of deflecting and lying and spinning. Um, all of a sudden, we're faced with the reality is, do I even know how to be honest? Am I even capable of being honest? We say things like, well, maybe I was just born that way. Maybe that's my personality or character. And I can assure you that it's not. Before we became alcoholics, matter of fact, when we were born, we didn't have those attributes. We didn't have them. They didn't exist in us. They were learned. So I'd like you to think about yourself not as broken or bad or weak, but just accumulated a bunch of conditioning as you grew up, like any normal human being would. But you were someone in behind that. You are that baby that's free of all of those things. But there are patterns in your life, there are behaviors in your life that you used over and over again to protect yourself, to make sure that you're safe, that this is the way you dealt with life. So this is not you. And we're going to call that the false self. The self that perhaps we've identified as ourselves, but isn't us. You see, if you believe and have faith in this advocate, this loving God, we have to start believing that we were given certain things. And I call that the sacred identity of the human being. See, I talk to a lot of alcoholics. I do. I talk to a lot. And it's funny the similarities that we all have. Yes, we all have differences, yes. But I'll tell you, there's a whole bunch of similarities. And one of those similarities is that we think we're bad. There's something wrong with us. We're less than. We're afraid. We're not capable. And we keep telling ourselves and reinforcing these into our brains so that they happen automatically, instantly. But who we are is in behind all that activity. That we were given a sacred identity. We were given values. We were given goodness. I'd like to share with you a quick story. I was doing a talk in the West Coast of the United States, and I was talking about love. I was talking about, that each of us have the capability of loving. Now, we may not love. That a, could be a fact, but we're capable of loving. So I was giving this talk about love, and each of us are capable of loving, not only loving this God, but loving ourselves and loving other people. And this lady gets on after this, having a conversation. She says, I don't think I have any love in me. There's no God in me. There's no sacred identity in me, John. And I says, well, I bet you that I can prove it to you. And she said, oh, yeah. I said, yeah. I said, tell me how you grew up. This lady grew up in a real hardship. Uh, two addict parents, suicide attempts. Age of 14, she moved out of that house, lived on the streets in Seattle. You can just imagine the kind of life that this child had and how she had to fend for herself. She's now a lady with two growing daughters. And soon as she started talking about her daughters, her tone changed completely. She loved her daughters. And I said, you love your daughters, don't you? She says, yeah, I do. She says, I probably love them more now than I ever have in my whole life. I just adore them. I said, where did that love come from? See, it wasn't mirrored to you as a child. There's nothing modeling of love in your home. Where did that come from? Well, her jaw dropped. I think she really had a spiritual experience in that moment because she just got to realize, oh my God, I do have a sacred identity. I do have purpose. We need to be in touch with that to honor what we're doing in the 12 steps. You see, we have got to stop thinking that we're bad or wrong or broken and get in touch with this idea that this God, this advocate that we can choose to have, has created us for a purpose. And when you think about it, I like to use the word the hounds of heaven. In your sacred being, in your heart space, your body is telling you things all the time. In other words, let's give you a simple example of what I'm saying to you. You know the difference between right and wrong. You probably knew it when you were drinking. You might have ignored it, but something was telling you that you knew what was right and what was wrong. We call this the gut sense. We call it intuition. That there's something deep in our souls that's telling us the hounds of heaven are barking at us, are chasing us to do the right thing. That's where we want to get to. That's what we want to listen to. That's what we want to respond to. And stop relying solely on the intellect. The intellect's a wonderful thing, by the way, but the brain at times works against us. But our bodies can't lie. It has no ability to lie. It just responds to what's there. So what we want to do is to start realizing that we have a sacred identity capable of loving, having empathetic, having compassion, and wanting to connect and belong to a community, to family, to your AA group in a deep way, a spiritual way. See, we need to belong, and that you're worthy of having these friendships, these relationships. You're worthy to feel good about yourself. I know you're from England, some of the states here. I don't know what it's like in your cultures, but to say that I feel good about myself in some cultures is arrogance and prideful, but it isn't. It's not. It's healthy. It's healthy to say to yourself, look yourself in the mirror, look deep into your eyes, and talk to that person and saying, you know what? You are worthy. I'm going to retrain how I think, feel, and believe because I have been given an advocate that has given us deep and effective spiritual experiences that has changed our hearts in such a way that I can start believing that I'm a good human being. See, friends, if you have faith and trust that this is occurring, and I call this experiential prayer, by the way, getting out of your head and into your heart. So when you pray, for instance, the Serenity Prayer, the third step prayer, the seventh step prayer, or prayer of St. Francis, if you follow that regimen, don't just say the words. Imagine that they're actually occurring as you speak. Experience it. Say, God, grant me the serenity, and thank you for the serenity that you have given me. And believing that I'm getting and receiving this serenity to accept the things I cannot change. I want to be more aware of how I'm trying to control things. And I'm going to stop doing it because all that's there is stress and anxiety and upset because I'm trying to control something I cannot control, including I should be somebody else. No, no, no. I accept myself because I was given purpose and meaning for life through this thing we call a higher power. So we're always constantly looking for this divine support as a gentle and flowing river through our lives, washing away the debris of past traumas and leaving clarity in its wake. We become free. We want to come to rely on this idea. Now, you might say, well, I don't believe it. And you got every right to say that. And I'm not surprised to hear you say that. This is why we turn to prayer over and over. This is why we surrender. This is why we let go. This is why we let go, we allow. So we came to believe and have faith. See, came to believe implies a journey. So one who has never, let's say, comes into the program, who's never participated in any kind of faith life, they say, well, I don't believe. And that's a fair statement. And you can't expect yourself to believe because you just say, one day I want to believe. But these practices will bring you to the belief and the faith and the trust. This is why we practice these steps. We just don't take the steps, we practice them. We practice them to the best of our ability. And one of the most challenging things that we need to practice is this idea of surrendering, letting go, and stop trying to control things that I can no longer or never have been able to control. Because at the center of that is peace, the thing that I was searching for all my life. Peace. To know that I am okay. To know that I have purpose and meaning. That I can be a fully functioning human being because I have been given the grace of this idea of a sacred identity. Hear how practical this is? This isn't pie in the sky. This is practical. Now, one might say, yeah, but you can't prove it, John, and you're right. I cannot. Proving it is unimportant. Like we talked earlier, the proof is not there. So why try to prove it? it's like, do I have to understand how the car engine works to drive the car? I don't. I just get in the car and I put the key on, and guess what happens? The motor starts for some crazy reason. I got no idea why. And then I put my foot on the pedal on my right foot, and the car goes. And when I want to stop, I take my foot off the accelerator and put it on the brake, and it slows down. I don't have to know how the car works. If I were, and Wilson gives this idea, the 12 and 12, I believe, is about the iron lung. The idea of the iron lung. I don't have to know how the iron lung works, but I could benefit from it. So it's that desire to give up the intellect in this moment and create this idea of a higher power moving you gently through your life, and to trust and to fall in love with the experiences that you're having, even if those experiences are uncomfortable. Because there is a force like gravity out there, and it's called the status quo. Oh, I'm okay. Oh, I'm fine. I don't need to do all that. I'm fine. I've never been happier. So I start making comparisons to my worst day of my life to a life that I'm having at the moment. See, I'm a lot better. The challenge with that, the problem with that is you're not getting in touch with what you're capable of. Now, this isn't grandiose thinking, by the way, my friends. We were given purpose, and we will not have a happy life until we are stretching to that purpose. We don't have to arrive at the purpose, but we need to be progressing towards it to be able to feel and experience its higher power. I want to give you a metaphor, which I've given people. I think I'm just about out of time here. So I see this higher power in a metaphoric term, that it's wind. Wind. Can you see the wind? No, you can't see the wind. I can see the leaves rustling as a result of the wind, but I can't see the wind. Do I know where the wind started? I do not. And do I know where the wind ends up? I do not. It's a phenomenon. But I can feel the wind. I can feel it on my face. So my higher power is like the wind at my back. You see? Moving me gently towards the purpose in which I was born. See, I don't believe for a moment I was born to be an alcoholic. I became one, but I was born to do certain things I'm good at, certain things that I can affect people with. That's what I was born for. And for me to get back on that path is the only way I'm going to find true peace and true happiness. Friends, this is what we're called. We are called to let go, to surrender, to allow, to live in the space and here, this heart space. You know, if a bunch of exercises, we're not going to do them obviously, but one of the exercises is point to who you are. See, most people will go here. Here I am. It's the most natural thing to do. I'm here. People rarely go, oh, I'm here. They don't do that. So instinctually, intuitively, we understand who we are as a human being is in the heart space, in our intuition. This is who we are. And we need to learn more to be in that space and get out of this idea that we're just thinking human beings. We're more than that. We're sensing human beings. And I believe with your practice experiential prayer that you're developing faith and trust that you're meditating quietly and silently, that you're welcoming in this power as a possibility, that your hearts will change, that you'll come to know yourself differently, that you may even have to reintroduce yourself to yourself because you won't know who you are because you're used to being somebody else. Friends, this is what it means, in my view, to have emotional sobriety. I'm out of time, I think. Friends, I appreciate your listening. I hope you get something out of it. I enjoyed sharing some of my life with you and some of my beliefs with you, and I'll turn it back to the chairperson.
Just waiting for the pause button there. John, thank you